Okay, so as far as today's agenda is, I do want to review any questions on creating the merit plan or rolling it out. And then for today, I want to initiate the bonus process. And I want to show you guys how to create the compensation template. And then we'll go through the manage impacted employees step. And then we'll view the budgets on the control page. So let me jump into the Workday screen, and I could show what to others also which field you're referring to. Yeah, every one of these fields, like for example, every one of these fields has a big impact somewhere. And unfortunately, in terms of the Workday training, there's not a good definition like that's in the textbook. Experience, you get to know okay, exactly where this impact is. I have an example of a compensation matrix which I will post. Compensation matrix, which I'm actually going to cover in the later sessions. But in summary, what this is imagine this is a table. Imagine this is a table that has your rating scale, like 1 through 5, like an employee gets a rating of 1 through 5. And then it will say if the rating is 1, then your target percent could be 90% to 120%, because assuming 1 is the highest rating. The second rating, number 2, their target may be from 80 to 90. So it does show when you're looking at the compensation grid based on that matrix, it will show the guideline. Like if this was the rating, then the guideline increase should be 100%. So there will be a column for guideline, and then the manager could see what's the system generated guideline, and then they could either accept that or they could put their own. But in order to come up with a budget target, it does not use the compensation matrix. It just uses the target we put in the merit plan profile here. It uses these. The include active employees assigned during process period. So from the time that the process period start date and the process period end date, if you want to include, if you want to assign this, when we do a merit process or a bonus process, right, it's going to say the business, like the HR partners will tell you that, hey, we want to do merit process on our employees from, say, for example, from July 1st, 2019 through December 31st. So the process period would be the July 1st, 2019 through December 31st. That would be the 6-month period. Sometimes there might be, like some companies might do a full year period, or they might do a 6-month period, but that's what's meant by the process period. Correct. It would be the performance review period.
Got it.
Yeah. Because it's usually in the past, right? Like right now, companies are doing the evaluations for the last half of 2019. So when you're launching this, you will be launching it with the process period of July 1st, 2019 through December 31st.
We didn't do that anything yesterday about the compensation segment security. Is that not necessary here? Why is that given?
Compensation security is going to be rarely used, and I'm not even going to cover it, but I'll tell you what this is about. If there is a part of, usually by the default access, managers have access to their employees' compensation data. They will know that, hey, their employees' target percent is 3, they're on which particular grade. So managers by default, they will have access to all of the compensation of their employees. But some company might say, hey, we don't want to show our managers the grade profile of the employee. So in order to limit a particular segment of the security, you could do a segment-based security. Also, it depends if the company wants to give the employees the access to their own grade level. As far as the compensation data goes, managers and management chain, they already have full security. So if a company wants to do a compensation segment security, this would be if they want to give, like, for example, a financial analyst, they want to give financial analyst the access to what the target percent is for the employees. So then you would create a segment giving access to a particular segment within the comp world to a finance employee. And the reason it's called segment security is because you could select a particular field and give us access just to that particular field. The one example where I did use it was in employee documents. So by default, managers don't have access to employee documents, and even recruiters will not have access to employees' termination document or promotion document. So this is an actual document that gets uploaded into Workday. So in that case, I had to create a segment security granting access to the document type of promotion and to the group recruiter. Anything else on the merit plan? So when we launch merit to a group of employees, that's called a merit plan event. So it automatically gets captured here. So today, before class, I was doing a walkthrough by myself to make sure everything was working fine. So I initiated a compensation event using this plan. So that's why it's tagged as like it was initiated today, and it's in progress. Just the history of every time you launch the process to the company, it will just get captured over here. So I'm actually going to cancel it so I could launch it again during the class. Okay, so moving on from there. So for today, I'll go through initiating the bonus, and then in order to make that process a little bit easier, we actually create a compensation template. And template just means like a repeatable process, right? Where you put in the dates once, and then every time you want to launch it, you can use those dates. This really comes indeed during testing. Okay. So we'll go over that. So the overall merit business process is, it starts with initiation, and then it ends with compensating the employees. So the last step is when the employee actually gets paid, the money gets deposited into their bank account. So that is the last step of the merit process. It will get input based on whoever has been the assigned in the role to compensate. So it could be managers, it could be HR, or it could be merit reviewer group. Like you could come up with like maybe the leaders of the organization, and you'll assign them as the merit reviewers for each org, and then you will launch the process to them. Okay, so these are the basically steps. There's initiation step. Once you initiate it, Workday does a calculation and it does the eligibility. It tries to find out who's eligible for it. So it's gonna look at the whole company, and then based on your eligibility criteria that you put in the merit plan, it will select those people. So those people would be eligible for it, and then you will get the HR admin or the compensation admin. They will get this step in their inbox. It will say manage impacted employees. This means that these people on this list, they have some kind of a job change in progress. So that means there will be a conflict. So that means if there's any active or pending transaction, it will show up in this step, and it will be the job of HR partner to either approve that step or cancel that pending transaction. So this will only show the people who have a pending transaction during that period. So that's actually from a time-consuming point of view. For a large organization, this could be a very time-consuming, because once you see the list of people who have a pending transaction, you have to give that list to the HR partner, and then they have to go to the manager and discuss it, like, okay, they have this particular job change in process or transfer in process. Do you want to approve it now, or do you want to cancel it and then do it after the the process is done? The performance review step will, if the company does have a performance review step, it will be it will happen before you actually launch Merit. Just in case someone is not aware, performance module is another module within Workday where there's a template where manager will evaluate their employees. It's got goals on it. You might have a field like, okay, how well do you think you did? How well does the manager think you did? It will be a template that manager employee fills out, and at the end of that, there's a rating. That rating will get fed into the merit process. Okay. So after the manage impacted step, there's configure pools. That means each of the affected organizations, they have, based on the calculations, you'll see a certain budget. Basically on that one, you just have to do an audit to make sure that it matches what the comps, offline numbers are. So configure, review, distribute the pools, and then you launch the step. So when we launch it, we launch it as a shared participation step. The reason Workday started calling it shared is because you could allow the HR partner to propose an increased amount, or you could have the manager. But basically, it could be is anybody who has the security access to participate in it, or anybody that the company sets up, they're able to propose as the manager. And then, they actually propose, and then at the end of that, you release a merit statement to the manager, or the manager gives it to the employee. And then, of course, the data at the end, when all the data entry has been done, it's been reviewed, then you have to give that data to payroll. If it's Workday payroll, then it would flow automatically. If not, you will typically download the data into a report, and then put it down some kind of secure drive and give it to payroll. But every company has a different way of getting the data to to their payroll system. If you have an integration set up, then obviously the integration will take the data to ADP or whatever payroll system they have. So I was saying that the reason it's called shared participation is because Workday has enabled the functionality such that in addition to your direct line manager, anybody else that you configure, maybe like some top managers, they could also participate and propose certain bonus amount or merit amount.
Oh, okay, got it.
So when they open up the functionality to that, I mean, initially it was just the line managers, right? So in order to set this up, right, the consultant or whoever's setting this up, whether it's a consultant or it's an internal, HRIS member, they typically need at least 1 week to set it up and then 1 week to test it, right, to tweak it out. And then for the managers, it depends on the company. If it's not a large company, you could give them as little as 3 days for the initial manager, and then 1 more week for those people who have like multiple organizations. So maybe 2 weeks would be the time frame for the manager to propose. But you have to emphasize to the line manager that hey, it doesn't just because there's a 2-week period, the line manager cannot wait till the second week, right? Because that second week, the second and the third and the fourth level managers, they need to propose at that time. So you always have to emphasize that when the process is launched, the first line managers should do the proposing within the first 3 days, and then it'll go to the second and the third and so on. You get what I'm saying, right, on that? And that's something that it won't, it's not going to be part of the book material, but it's just from experience that you need at the minimum of 2 weeks, and you do need to emphasize on the line manager, you got to get it done in the first 3 days. Yes, this will be for every merit cycle, whether it's going to be, merit cycle is usually annual. So if it's the merit by itself, it's typically an annual process. Bonus could be annual or it could be semi-annual. Basically over here, just saying that when you launch the merit event, the system, identifies who's participating in the plan based on the eligibility rules. And then in order to launch it, there's 2 ways to launch it. You could launch it directly from the plan's related actions, or you could type this as the menu name in the Workday search bar. So the task would be initiate merit process. That's the task name. So whenever I say, hey, there's a particular task name, that means you just take this and put it into the Workday search bar. I did have a diagram here. During the merit planning process, these are the critical dates that you need to know before you launch the process. So HR or the business will tell you that, hey, we want to launch this process from some particular, starting date to a process period end date. So for example, if you're doing this for, 2020, you launch it, they might tell you that this is going to cover from January 1st through January 30th. So your process start date is going to be that, process end date is going to be the last date, and the employees have to be eligible within this time frame. Okay. Another date that you need to be aware of is called the organization snapshot date. So the organization snapshot means this date will be that will determine who is the manager of that employee. So typically, you want to select this date to be the last date, to be the same as the process end date, because after the process end date, there might be transfers or changes, or there might be new managers, and the new managers will not know. Like if you use the current manager, or if you use the current date as the organization snapshot date, then the current manager may not be the manager who managed the employee during the process time frame. So the best idea would be to use organization snapshot date equal to the process end date, or as close as possible to it. Maybe within 1 week of that or 2 weeks, but definitely you don't want to have a long time frame between the process end date and the organization snapshot date. And then there will be a launch date parameter. Basically, that would be when you're launching it. The effective date, this means that if this is the effective date of the salary increase. So the employee gets a salary increase effective that particular date, and we have to enter that date when we're launching the program. Outside of the system, or it could be even within the system, we need the date for communication to the employee. And then you want to make sure you communicate to the employee before the employee visibility date, because the data will be visible in the system, but you want to make sure that you communicate to the employee before that date. And I left 2 steps here as question marks. And the reason I did that is to intentionally point out that there's 2 things that need to happen here. One would be sending the data to payroll. So you need to make sure you find out from payroll, when do they need the data by? So that data is very critical, even though within Workday, there's no place to enter that, right? It's not even part of the Workday configuration or setup. But you must be aware of when does payroll need that data? And then obviously, when will payroll deposit the money into the employee's account? Because employees will ask you that. So if you're the one who's responsible for the communication, these days would be very important to put on the communication, like, hey, to the managers, that you make sure you communicate to the employees by this particular date, because the employees will have visibility on that particular date, and they will get the money in their accounts, by the end of the month or this, semi-annual. So these dates are very important when we're setting this up. So this is the date the Workday will take as the, like it will identify whoever the manager and the management chain for that employee was, and we'll look at that date. So launch date would be when we actually launch the program within Workday. The process start date and the process end date is the merit is going to be based on the employee's performance from January 1st through January. The reason I pointed this out is even though when I went through my initial training and even after, like my first implementation, I never really got a good definition of what are the dates that we need and what they actually mean. So I was like, okay, I need to just make a slide on this, and then these are key dates to keep in mind for communication and also for setup. All right, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to pretend as though we're going to launch the merit program out to the eligible population. So there's 2 ways to do that. From the action menu, we could select compensation review initiate. That's one way. And you could just type in directly here, initiate merit. And then you can select that. So I also want to show when we launch it, the steps it's going to go through, and it's based on the business process definition of the compensation review process. So usually to find the business process definition, you just type in BP as lowercase with a colon, and you might type merit. Up until just last half of last year, there was also bonus, initiate bonus, or there was initiate stock. But as of now and going forward, the stock process or bonus, even if they're standalone by themselves, they're always going to be part of the merit business process. You'll never do a bonus process with like BP bonus. If you try to search for it, it might exist, but hopefully it will say do not use Yeah, so here, when I said VP bonus, I see do not choose, because now bonus process is part of the merit process, even though you might do it separately. Like, it'll just be for bonus, but you'll still use the merit process for it. I know it's kind of confusing, but that's how it is. I'm not making that up. Okay, so in order to see the merit business process, we type VP merit, and then just search for all of the related information. So I do see that we have initiate comp review process. We have proposed employee merit. That's the one we're not going to use. And then we have initiate comp review. Okay, so let's check that definition out. Okay. The actual business process configuration is a separate class, but I'll just give you an overview of the comp review process. There's multiple steps that could be configurable. There's the initiation step. And over here, it doesn't show who could initiate it, because the initiation is listed here. These are the groups that could initiate the merit process, or this compensation review process. So it'll be the comp admin, implementer, HR admin. So anybody who has these groups, they could initiate it. Once it's initiated, the next step, which is the manage impacted employees, it will go to the comp admin. And after that, it will go to configure pool step, which also goes to comp admin, distributed comp admin, launching it goes to comp admin. But as far as who actually does the proposing of the salary increase, that's part of the shared participation step. And then you configure that here by clicking on the configure participation step. And then it asks you for the effective date. Leave that as the default, so you know what's in effect as of current. And then it says here, the participation step is based on the supervisory org, and it's going to go to the manager. So supervisory org just means, in Workday, everybody is part of a supervisory org, right? So like 100% of the time, I've always used supervisory, but you could also use cost center. Like you only want to launch this out to a particular cost center, then you will change this from supervisory to cost center. And then this is here manager. That means the manager, the first line manager, will get they will get an item in their inbox saying that, hey, it's now time to propose salary increases for your employees. Please go to the inbox and click on that Workday task. If you did not want to launch this to manager, like some people or some companies will only want to launch this to like top level managers. So instead of manager, you might have another group called a merit reviewer. That group will need to be created, but you'll have a merit reviewer group, and then you will assign that merit reviewer group to each supervisory org. And then once you create it, you assign it, you update the security domain, you'll have to add this group to the domain that gives access to, propose the data. Once you do that, then this item will go to the merit reviewers into their inbox. So by default, merit reviewers group does not exist. It could be just the comp partner, compensation pool manager, or the employee's manager. By manager, it means not only the management, but also the management chain all the way up to the top. So that's the configure shared participation step of the business process. You always want to check under the notifications tab that there might be notifications that go out to certain groups, and you want to be aware of that in case you're new to the job, or if you're implementing it, you may want to find out who do you want to send a notification to. So we look down here, we see that there's some notifications that are going to the compensation partner when the step is completed. So obviously this is kind of redundant because the compensation partner is the one who's initiating it. They're the ones who are going to finalize it. But there is a notification built that says that, hey, when the step is completed or when this process is completed, send a notification to the comp partner. In case it's canceled, like you launch it, but then you realize, hey, we put in the wrong dates, or we put in the wrong eligibility criteria, you may need to cancel it, or you may need to rescind it. So you could also put in a notification. But in these kind of things, when you're doing a large rollout, it's probably better to communicate offline directly rather than have a system send out the notifications. Because obviously, if you're going to rescind it, if you launch it and then 30 minutes later you realize, oops, we put in the wrong dates, you probably don't want to send out a notification to all your managers, right? Because once you're rescinded, the item is going to disappear from their inbox anyways. And you might want to just send out an email, saying, please ignore that item if you happen to see it in your inbox. Okay, so those are the business process steps and any notifications that were part of this. Okay, moving on. So I'm going to go back to our merit plan, and I'm going to, instead of launching it from the top where it says initiate merit, I'm going to launch it from the actual plan. The template is not required, but during testing and implementation, it's best to have a template because it saves you from typing the same dates over and over. So I'll just quickly go through creating the template. So the task name is create compensation review process template. When you're typing it in, you can just abbreviate it. As long as you use at least the first two letters of the task name. So for create, I always just type CR, create comp template. So by default, we select compensation review template. Give it a name. You have to give a process name. This name will actually show up on as part of the inbox item that goes to the managers or HR. So you want to give it a name such as first half 2020 merit review, or it could be second half 2019. Like a name that kind of helps explain what this is about. Okay. Effective date. These are the dates that we talked about on that other screen. In that diagram. So effective date would be. So since we're going to do, let me just change this back to first half 2020. Well, I'll just call it 2020 merit review. Effective date, we could say August 1st. Process period end date. This would be, if this was a semi-annual plan, the process period end date, you could type in as June 30th. Organization snapshot. Remember I said we want the organization snapshot to be as close to the process period end date.
Yeah, 30.
So I'm gonna, 30. And then employee visibility date. This should be
15th August.
Yeah, it should be 15 August. Reference currency would typically be USD. Grid configuration, we don't have to do it here. But if we had a grid that's already ready, then we could select it, but I don't have a grid ready yet. So I'm going to leave that blank. Compensation review options, I'll do it on the initiate screen. So anything that I don't enter here, I'm going to have to enter in the initiate step. Rating scale, I haven't created a rating scale yet, so I'll just use something that's already exists in the system. These other fields allow pooled holdbacks, overages, display remaining pools. This refers to the fact that when you have a merit budget, and each supervisory organization has a particular budget, are you gonna give them their whole budget, or you want to keep some money back to give it to them later? So like an organization's budget could be 100K, but you want to enable it in the system that you're going to hold back 10K and you're only going to give them 90K. So if you want that kind of functionality, you will want to make sure that this is selected instead of unselected. So some organizations do that. The reason is the top managers, they want to hold some money back so that when the lower level managers have done the proposing, they could sit down and they could review it, and they want to make sure that everything has been done fairly. They want to make sure there hasn't been any favoritism, and then they could adjust it. Maybe they recognize some employee and they want to give that employee more. So if there's a holdback, they could take that money from that holdback and then add it to the proposed amount. And if there's a holdback, the initial managers, they will not see the holdback amount. They will just see that they will see 90,000 as their budget instead of seeing 100,000. So that's the that's the function, that's the meaning behind allow pool holdbacks. Allow pool overages. That means, do you want to allow the manager to go over budget? Typically, you want to leave this as yes. You want to leave it as checked, because if you don't leave it as checked, sometimes the manager may only need to go over by like $1. And if this is not checked, then they won't be able to proceed. So it's better to leave this checked, but tell them in person or in training, hey, do not go over. But don't make it into a hard error, because then unnecessarily you'll stop the system from proceeding over like very small amounts. And then display remaining pools as the manager is proposing a certain amount. You want to show what's left. So there's another, there's a widget that shows what your current budget is and how much is remaining. So if you want to display that, typically it's always a good idea to display that, unless you're trying to hide information from your line managers. And then on the plans tab, you want to indicate which merit plan this template is for. So I'm going to select the one that I created. We're not including any bonus plan at this time, and we're not including any stock plan at this time. So we're just going to select merit. We do need to create a merit reason so that under the employee's history, you will see, this raise and like what's the reason that's associated with it. So it could be merit, you could say by default, you'll say merit adjustment. Other options would be merit performance. And it will be, it could be more likely performance, annual performance appraisal. Merit compensation snapshot date. This will be the date the system will use to look at the person's compensation data. So this date should be the same as the process period end date. So June 30th would be the compensation date here. It says here, do you want to pre-fill employee merit awards? That means, like, say, for example, if everybody in the US was going to get a 3%, do you automatically want to pre-fill that merit award by 3%? Typically, probably not a good idea. You want to allow the manager to autofill, though. So it's probably a good idea to select this. So the manager could select autofill, and then it will just fill 3% for everybody. And then the manager could adjust it as needed, rather than just pre-filling it for everybody. Okay, so I want to make sure everybody understands the reasons behind these fields and what to select. Okay. So I'm gonna click OK. And then we have to click Done. When you click Done, it takes you to whatever page that you were on previously. So this is not because this is not my next step. It just shows that I was on this page prior to before I started that step. So don't worry about that. Okay, so we created that template, and I'm gonna pull that template up. So V1 test 1. Okay, so now based on my template, all of this data got populated. And I might launch it once and go through it. I need to come back and make some adjustments, so I'm gonna have to launch it again. And then I'll just select the template. So that's where it's helpful to create that. And then here, we need a grid. I have not created a grid configuration, so I'll select something that already exists. So let me look for something that's merit. There's a merit grid. So here's the details of what we're going to submit. We do need to put in a composition review options. If there was an employee review template, like if there was a performance review, and we want to get the rating from there, so we'll get the annual performance review template and select the correct one. select the rating scale. This just indicates that the merit plan, this is going to be launching, and there's going to be additional adjustments. If you want to allow the manager to give any other adjustment outside of just merit, like they want to give them a particular raise for reasons other than merit, or if you don't want to make a lump sum payment as like a one-time payment, you could select it here, and it's we do have to provide a reason for that. Like the reason would be what will show up in the employee's profile. Like when they gave the additional lump sum, it will show in their system that it was because of maybe it was a cost of living. And if they do a lump sum payment, we have to select the appropriate reason for it. And there might be a one-time payment plan called lump sum. Yep. Okay. So we have initiated it, and then it went to login, and it says it's the manage impacted employees list. So I know I just said this was going to be a short class. I do want to end it. I will go ahead and show you this step, and then I need a few minutes of your time afterwards because our sports staff wants to show you how to use the LMS system. So just give me about another minute, and then I'll turn it over to the sports staff. Okay. So it says here, manage in progress processes. So manage impacted employee means employees who have in progress transactions. And we click here to see who they are. Okay. So we see there's 5 employees, and they have transactions that are going on and these transactions have the same effective date, or they're within that time frame, or they might be even this tab is prior to the default effective date, and then there might be others who have a transaction that's after the effective date. Typically, the transactions that are happening after the effective date probably won't matter. They're not going to affect their salary increase until that date, but it's good to be aware of them and then make sure the HR partner reviews this list in case they want to take that into consideration. But anything that's on the prior to default effective date, this must be taken care of. So these are transfers. These will need to be either approved or canceled. These are terminations. You may have a rule that says, hey, if someone terminated during the process period, automatically remove them from the process, but keep their budget as part of the overall budget. And the system allows you to select transactions and send a notification to their manager or the HR partner or whoever is waiting on. So at this time, I'm not going to send any notification to them. If there's any termination rule or a parallel events rule, you would do that on this step as well. You click on edit, and you might have a rule that says, or the one I just spoke of, that if the person has terminated, the person was here during the process period, but now they have terminated. So we want to remove that employee from the process, but we want to keep their money as part of the budget. So you might make up a rule like that based on whatever the business requirement is. So I'm going to select keep in process and keep the pool amount. If I select that, then it will keep the terminated folks in there. If I select this one, remove employee and pool, depending on how this was set up. This is remove employee from the reprocess and remove employee from the pooled amount. That's kind of odd because normally what I've seen is you do want to remove the person who is now terminated, but you want to keep their budget as part of the overall budget because your salary budget was based on the population you had at that time. Parallel event means you do have that functionality to do transfers. So you could set up a rule that says, hey, even if we do a particular transfer, we do want to keep the pool fixed and the target fixed. But based on those conditions, you might, it does get a little confusing if you do set up if you do allow transfers during the merit process, but you could do that. You just have to be very carefully in understanding what those requirements are and then building it appropriately. You might say that you could do a job change as long as you select this particular reason, if it's an international transfer that cannot wait, you may allow that, but you might communicate that they must select the international transfer. And then if there is a international transfer, and then you do want to update the pool, or they may say, hey, keep the pool and don't update that. So that kind of functionality is there. These are just configurations that you could select from. So I'm gonna hit, you don't have to hit save. When you hit finalize, whatever is here, it gets automatically saved. Okay, so I'm gonna stop here. I will discuss with the support team our next session because I do need some time to prepare the materials because I know we're covering a lot of stuff and there's let me discuss with the support team when we could have the material ready. Just real quickly, if you guys have any question on what I covered today, I'll just take about a minute for that, and then I'll turn it over to the support staff. Thank you, everybody.